Thank you guys for joining us. My name is Damian Holsworth, Head of Global Partnerships and Alliances here at Logiwa. I want to personally welcome each and every one of you to our Partner Spotlight webinar today. We're excited to have you, and we certainly appreciate your time. Couple quick housekeeping notes before we get going. In the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you guys should see a chat bot. You probably have a chat bot, but a chat box where you can put any questions you might have throughout the webinar. Those will come to Todd and myself, and we'll be able to see them and make sure if you guys have any difficulties or anything, we can get those answered. In addition to that, that's also where you'll post your questions that you have for Kyle, for Sean, or myself. And you can feel free to drop those at any time during the webinar. At the end, again, we'll come back and do a live Q&A. And so we'll make sure we try to get through every question as best we can. Couple things to note: we'll tag your question based on your user profile. In the event that I can't get it answered in the allotted time that we have, I will ensure that whoever's necessary to follow up with you, that we get you the information you need. One of the things I always try to do is get you guys out on time. I know your time is valuable. I'd like to try to get us out of here in about 45 minutes. We can stay a little bit longer if the questions are there. But again, just want to get you guys out on time, and certainly appreciate you spending a little bit of your time today with us. And then lastly, we will have a special offer at the end of the webinar for the attendees. Thank you to Kyle and the Two Boxes team for thinking about some ways to do something special for this audience. So really appreciate that. Now with that, why don't we go ahead and get into the agenda a little bit. So whether you joined us in the past or you're tuning in for the first time, welcome. This series is all about sharing practical insights from Logiwa's best-in-class technology partners who are helping fulfillment operations solve complex challenges that you deal with every day. At Logiwa, we're committed to be the best WMS in the market, and we actually are shifting the conversation to be fulfillment management software, FMS, and you'll hear us talk a lot about that to better reflect the modern fulfillment operations and modern tech needs that you need to solve the ongoing business challenges that you're looking to address. And to achieve this, we don't just innovate internally. We want to align with the best-in-class technology partners, and we believe when it comes to returns, Two Boxes does just that. We're going to tackle one of the most common pain points in fulfillment: returns. When I was preparing for this webinar, I was actually watching a couple of interviews on returns, and a lot of folks expressed it as a headache. And I can recall many times being in warehouses, and people would point to the returns area, and they wouldn't want to go near it because it was a mess. And so I've seen the lack of automation and the great need to help solve, a common area that most of us deal with every day. From a customer perspective, customers now expect returns to be part of the buying process. I know I do personally. And with that, for a lot of 3PLs and brands, a lot of folks on this call, returns constrain operations and tie up valuable inventory, right? And then you want to layer in tariffs and disruptions to global supply chain. There's even more of a need to quickly inspect items, get them allocated to the proper area, and ideally, if they're resellable, get them back into inventory as quick as we can, as efficient as we can. And that's why we're really excited to dig into this topic with our partner, Two Boxes, and their incredible client, Moby Dick 3PL. They're here to share how smarter returns processes unlock real value from improved inventory availability and operational efficiency, if I can talk today, across the warehouse. Before I jump into that, I do realize we've got a bit of a mixed audience. So we've got longtime clients of Logiwa, and we've got some folks that are getting to know us and Two Boxes together. So quick background: Logiwa is a leading provider for cloud-based fulfillment management software. We're built to accommodate direct-to-consumer and B2B fulfillment operations. We want to give our customers the ability to fluctuate as they need to provide both B2B capabilities as well as D2C. A little bit from Logiwa.io, we are an API-first headless architecture. It's what enables us to quickly and seamlessly integrate with Two Boxes and other partners. We do have a modern UI. We focus a lot on self-serviceability and configuration over customization. And certainly we're leveraging AI and machine learning in very practical ways to drive real results to our customers. And lastly, we are a partner-centric approach. And so again, that's why we want to focus on 2 boxes today in our partnership. All right. And with that, before I get into the panel, Kyle and I are super excited today to announce that the integration between 2 boxes and Logiwa is officially live. This powerful partnership brings seamless returns management into fulfillment processes, enhancing inventory accuracy and operational efficiency. And just a big shout out to, Kyle, to your team, the product team and the engineering team, and the same on our side, who have gone above and beyond to ensure that this is a seamless integration with the richest experience possible for our customers. So, Kyle, I don't know if you want to say anything, but really, really excited to announce that today.
Yeah, thanks, Damien. No, we're also extremely excited to announce this as well. This is our first, dedicated WMS integration. It's one that we think really, really highly of. We think it's going to be a great thing for Logiwa customers, 2 boxes customers, and really the industry writ large. So really a huge thank you to the entire Logiwa team, kind of up and down. It's been a pleasure to work with y'all on this.
Hey, back at you, man. We appreciate it, and the great work's just beginning. So
absolutely,
really, really excited. So, all right, now with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our fantastic panel today. So if we can get everybody on the screen, I'll start first on the left with Kyle. Most of you probably know Kyle. If you don't, you will. Kyle is the co-founder and CEO of 2 boxes. Welcome, Kyle.
Thanks, Damien. Hey, everybody. Really just a pleasure to have so many people on the call today. I'm Kyle Bertine. I'm co-founder and CEO of 2 boxes. And really, we started 2 boxes because we saw a huge opportunity to really empower frontline staff in warehouses all across the country, but also third-party logistics providers and merchants to make returns an asset to their business instead of a major liability, which is what we think they tend to be today. So today, 2 boxes works with coming up on about 3 dozen 3PLs and over 250 merchants to power return operations in warehouses right now in 5 countries. And I'm really proud to be here today with a new partner in Logiwa, and then also actually our second customer ever, Mr. Sean Gallant here at Moby Dick. So really excited to have him as part of this. So thank you to the entire Logiwa team for having us and for everybody for attending.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for joining. And Sean, great segue to you, Director of Operations. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. If you want to say hi to the crowd, that'd be great.
Sean, I think you might be on mute, bud.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're at. Thanks for the intro there. Sean Gallant, Director of Operations here with Moby Dick 3PL. Kind of to Kyle's point, I think you hear a lot of it, at least from the operations side of this conversation today, just how big of a pain point that returns can be for an operation. And a lot of the things that I'll be able to kind of emphasize today on how the 2 boxes solution has really been a game changer for us. It's been a kind of a blessing. We met Kyle and the team, I think, just over 2 years ago now. And like I said, I can't stress enough that it's been a game changer for us. So extremely excited to be able to talk highly about that product and that partnership today.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sean. It's a great segue. So one of the things that I always try to do in advance of these webinars is just kind of go out and do some market research. And I found some really interesting stats that kind of, to be honest with you guys, were a bit shocking to me. They shouldn't be. One of the stats that's not on here on the left was, north of 30% of returns that are resaleable are scrapped. Sometimes it can be upwards of 50%. So it just goes to talk a lot about the importance of having inventory properly graded, put back in the proper location, and ideally, if it can be back in inventory, to do so. But, Sean, I'll start with you. Any of these stats jump out at you? Anything that you want to, a lot of the folks on this call are operations folks, dealing with the same thing that you are every day, whether they're a brand selling direct to consumer or they're a 3PL supporting multiple brands. Anything stands out to you here? I'd love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Damien, with especially that average return rate in apparel. You're correct there that it can be upward of 40%. I think for us, especially operationally, the biggest call out there is the cost per return. Obviously, there's a huge consideration on the average return rate, because I think it's something that, as you evaluate partnerships with brand, you have to make sure that you encompass that into your, profile that you build, the labor effort that's needed. But that cost per return, $10 to $20 average, I think that just highlights how expensive trying to recover returns can be, and that the more efficient, the more optimized that an operation, especially a fulfillment center, can be on recovering as much of that product as they can as possible at a most efficient rate, is huge for brands. It leads to great buyer retention, because if you can, exponentially process returns at a faster and cleaner pace, it's best. But that $10 to $20 average is always the one that stands out to me, because it just puts a stamp on exactly how expensive it is for these brands to try to, unfortunately, recover as many returns as they can. So, I appreciate the ask, and it's always going to be that for me.
Yeah. Kyle, how about you? Anything else?
I mean, I think the one that always, kind of jumps out to me, which also is not entirely exclusive from what Sean was commenting on, is really around fraud.
That was a big no.
Yeah. What we see in our data is, so that 15% stat there comes from the National Retail Federation, who last year said about 15% of returns were fraudulent, over $100 billion a year. We see very similar in our data set, for what it's worth. Kind of 10 to 15, sometimes 20%, depending on the category of goods and the type of brand. A lot of people ask me, like, well, what does that mean in terms of fraud, right? And I tend to think of it as on one end of the scale, it's abuse, and on the other end of the scale, it's like usually organized criminal activity. So abuse can be something like in Sean's facility, they might see dozens of times a day a return come back that either is not containing the right product, or it's the right product, but it's been used and abused and damaged in a way that it would not be in line with the merchant's return policy. That's somewhere in the range of 10 to 12% of returns on 2 boxes that we see day in and day out. The more nefarious thing that's really starting to rear its head over the last year has been more organized criminal activity, which is everything from figuring out how to return empty, boxes to warehouses and manipulate carrier scans, to more organized kind of like fraud as a service rings that exist, where people are exploiting return policies and doing it at scale with more sophisticated approaches. So I think this is something to really keep an eye on over the next year plus, with everything happening in the kind of global macro right now, especially with tariffs. I think if you're a 3PL on this call and you haven't been getting more pressure recently about return operations, it's likely coming soon. And if you're a merchant and you haven't looked into this yet, you really need to be, because there's a significant percentage of your inventory that's coming back that has a high cost to process if it's not optimized in the 4 walls today, number one. And number two, there's a lot of fraud and abuse that you can kind of rid out of your P&L with the right tools and providers. And that is a huge way to optimize inventory in this environment.
Yeah, Kyle, I was going through again some material, and I think it might have been a photo that you posted of some of the crazy returns that you guys get. And Sean, you probably deal with every day. I saw a pair of boots where they had mud all over them, but the claim was they'd never wore them. I'm like, it wasn't even an effort of attempting to clean them, just shoving them in a box. Or saying it's one thing and it shows up as another. So I can certainly realize the complexity of handling returns in you guys' environment, just from the little I know. Okay, with that, what I'd love to do is segue to Sean, you, and learn a little bit about your organization and what you guys do. I think the audience would really appreciate having some context there.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Damien. As I mentioned earlier with Moby Dick 3PL, just exactly to what you see on your screen on your left. And I think I want to speak to a little bit about our origin story, because I think it's very unique in the 3PL space. So Moby Dick initially did not start as a 3PL or fulfillment center. We actually were a brand managing organization. So a lot of the names that you're seeing on the screen there, Logan Paul, Mr. Beast, and Ninja, those are all different social media influencers that Moby Dick originally within its entirety was focused on, brand management. That includes procurement, graphic design, customer service, and then had outsourced a lot of that fulfillment. And I think what we had realized is, it's such a, I don't want to call it a chaotic market, but if you can imagine, social media influencers can be very hot and cold, and all of a sudden somebody will want to launch a new apparel line, and here's 100,000 units that have to get moved. And that's pretty disruptive to supply chain and especially fulfillment centers. So the decision was made to kind of create our own fulfillment to keep it in-house. So I think what makes us unique, and I circle back to that, is like we are such a brand-focused 3PL because we're used to managing brands, or we're used to being on both sides of the equation there. So that translates a lot to us into understanding what you go through on the brand side versus as well as a fulfillment center. We also were an early partner within the Shopify network. So I think it was 2018 when Shopify decided to get in the fulfillment network. We became one of the earliest nodes within the Shopify fulfillment footprint. As we exist today, we are a full 3PL. We don't really do a lot of the influencer work anymore. We do have multiple different brands that we just do fulfillment services for, but just to kind of highlight a lot of what we do, it's allowed us to kind of grow into, a multi-serviced solution for a lot of our brands that we partner with. So, your typical B2B, D2C, as you can see, FBA and FBM. So we can support all those. Return processing, it's been a huge leverage for us to be able to offer return processing. Damien, you mentioned earlier in the call about, typically returns is just in the corner somewhere because it's not an area that you want people to see, right? And for full transparency, we lived in that for a while, before we relocated to our new building, it was kind of this closet back in the corner. And Kyle remembers some of the early days of visiting facility when we're onboarding. It was just kind of like walk this way and try not to look. That's different for us now. As soon as you walk out of our doors within our facility, you walk right into the return department. It is the first thing that you see in our building. And a lot of that's just because of the gains that we've made, kind of create a return solution, a lot about what we'll talk about today. Highlight a couple other things, kitting, subscription services. We manage all that. We do domestic and international shipping. But, why do our clients love us? Fast, reliable on-site support. We can't drive that home enough. We speak to a lot of different potential partners that become very frustrated that they're dealing with a fourth party or somebody that's not in the building. So again, I think it kind of loops back to that origin story behind we understand what it takes to be on both sides of it or what it takes to manage both sides. And it just kind of ingrains into our values of an operation. So return processing has been, a huge thing for us. But, again, I'm excited to kind of talk about a lot of that today. But I think what you'll see through this is, again, it's a very unique origin story, and it just translates into the way that we are today and operate.
Yeah, Sean, my kids wanted to know if they could meet Logan Paul and Mr. Beast following this. And I told them I didn't think I was quite that cool, but I would definitely pass along that they thought you were very cool. Kyle, for you, Amelia's probably not old enough quite yet, but someday soon she'll probably know who these folks are as well. But yeah, Sean, you're a big hit in my household. I'm not sure what that tells me about my parenting skills, but you are a big hit in my household with these influencers. So
yeah. Sean, also, I don't know if you still do, but at least for a while, you were doing some particularly fun hot sauce fulfillment as well.
We did.
Yeah. So
what's that? Tell me about that.
So, within our time within Shopify fulfillment, one of the partners that we had that we were providing services through that Shopify connection was Heatness Hot Sauce, which most people are familiar with because of the show The Hot Ones. All the hot sauces that they do on the Hot Ones are all provided by Heatness, and they are a partner of ours, both as Shopify Fulfillment Network as well as some project work that we do. So Kyle's been able to come in and see some of the kind of the retail prep work that we've done for them. I haven't been able to catch him quite right at the right time to do a whole 10-pack hot sauce challenge with him, but I'm sure we'll end up.
We're going to pass on that today. That would have been interesting for this panel, let me tell you. Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you for that, Sean. So we'll come back in just a minute. But Kyle, I wanted to do the same for you. Have you come in and share a little bit with the organization and the audience what Two Boxes does for those that might not be familiar. That'd be great.
Sounds great. Awesome. Yeah. Hey, everybody. So yeah, just a little bit about us. So we provide software really inside of the four walls. We also provide hardware. So if you were to go and tour Sean's facility, there in Columbus, you would see both hardware and software that they're using every day. So on the right side here is sort of a little bit of a mock-up of what the hardware tends to look like. But effectively what we do is we enable folks like Sean and lots of facilities across the world right now to make returns a much more efficient, intelligent, and really streamlined process inside of the warehouse. So today we support about 50 facilities globally, over 150, over 250 brands live. We process at this rate about $200 million of inventory a year. That number is actually significantly higher now. We should hopefully end the year in the range of about $400 to $500 million of GMV process. And one of the things that I love to call out is that the average processing time for an associate in the warehouse is about 60 seconds from the first scan of that return, opening the box, to the inspection and disposition. And this is really, if I had to, kind of talk about the origin story for a minute, this is really the goal of what we're trying to do, right? Is we want to make returns, we really want to make them as efficient as outbound fulfillment. Now, when I talk to somebody like Sean, or I talk to a lot of 3PL leaders on this call, they probably might laugh at that and say, hey, like that's just not possible. And maybe it's not fully possible, but it is really the goal that we have, is how close can we shrink that delta between what everybody on this call can probably achieve on outbound fulfillment efficiency versus inbound return processing. When Evan, my co-founder, and I started the company, that was really this sort of aha moment we had touring a lot of fulfillment centers and just kept seeing that every fulfillment center had the nasty corner in the warehouse that nobody wanted to talk about. And the folks who were working there didn't seem particularly excited to be doing the job, and everybody seemed to have some gray hairs over it. So that's really what we do. One thing I also just love to call out here for folks on the call is we don't compete with or replace warehouse management systems, and we don't compete with or replace return management RMA providers like Loop Returns, Happy Returns, Narvar, Aftership, Redo, Return Go, some of the leading providers in that space. We really are existing here to try to kind of fix that messy middle, as we like to refer to it, between a Loop Returns getting a return to Sean's warehouse and a Logiwa or another WMS kind of taking over that process. We really just focus on being open, integratable, enabling the warehouse to do what they want to do best, and enabling the merchant to get excellent service.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Kyle. Kyle, one quick question. How did you guys get here? Like, I'd love to know, and Sean, I meant to ask you the same. Like, I don't know if, 10 years ago, you're like, I'm going to be part of a amazing company that solves returns, and it's called Two Boxes. Like, what was your journey to get to this place?
Yeah. No, I can go first. My background was originally in finance and management consulting. And then back in 2013, early 2013, I fell into logistics work by accident. I joined a company I thought to do a different job, and I ended up building out the transportation business at that company. It was a publicly traded mining company. I was very underqualified to build out a transportation business there. But my boss put a lot of trust in me, and I learned a lot. And I got sort of the supply chain and logistics bug, I guess you could say. I'd spent, before Two Boxes, I spent some time in freight forwarding and then also warehouse robotics. And that's where I met my co-founder, Evan, at a warehouse robotics company called Outrider. And we kept having this experience going into fulfillment centers, and there were all kinds of different, names on the door. And no matter whose name was on the door, it was always the same experience of really cool technology and software for the outbound side of that building. But the return section looked like a nightmare. And sometimes that nightmare was 500 square feet, and sometimes it was 50,000 square feet, right? And we thought to ourselves, this seems like it's an interesting problem to go and solve. And so It's been a long journey to get here. We're a little over 3 years old, and we still have, a long way to go. But we've just been really proud of the progress that we've made thus far and the customers that we've been able to serve along the way.
Love it. I mean, it's an interesting theme. People are like, I fell into operations. Sean, quick.
Sean, how about you?
Yeah, say, Sean, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I fell into operations. I've been in fulfillment for 25 years, which is probably why so much gray exists on my head. Those that are in the operations on the call, they definitely understand that. For us, kind of to Kyle's point earlier, it's always been a painful process for most operations. There was a huge gap that did exist for a lot of operations to figure out a way to process returns in a efficient, transparent way. I'll go back to my tenure with Shopify. Prior to being with Moby Dick, I was actually an employee of the Shopify Fulfillment Network, and even then we had a gap that just existed. We didn't even, as an organization such as Shopify, didn't even have a good way to solve this, both operationally on the floor as well as from a partner-facing, transparency and reporting side of it. So, we met Kyle through a mutual partner that we have, and I'm still to this day glad that Kyle fell into it and met Evan at an organization, and it just kind of kicked off this whole thing. So, I'd like to say I fell into operations or logistics.
But you've been there the whole time, huh?
Yeah, I've been there the whole time. I go back to the AS400 kind of warehouse management system days. So I
know those days too, Sean. I know those days too.
Yeah, those days still exist, by the way, for a lot of people.
They very much do. So do Excel spreadsheets. No. Hey, thank you guys for the context. I'm sure that our audience appreciates that, and thank you for taking some time to share your backstories. What I want to do is segue next into a little bit of like how do returns show up as challenges. And I think Kyle, you've got a slide here that the team put together, so I'll kind of let you speak to this. But I'd love to have you touch on this, and then Sean, just comment to how did this show up in your environment? What kind of led us to start thinking, hey, returns has got to be a better way? Because you got a lot of folks on this call that haven't fully solved returns yet. So love to spend some time here.
Sure thing. I'd go first. Then, Sean, I'd love you to jump in and speak to any of your experience here. I think when we first started digging into this, several years ago, my co-founder Evan and I just, were just amazed at how many problems that seemed like they existed in the return section that really didn't exist on the outbound side of the facility. And it really starts at the beginning, right? It's like, what is actually going to show up that day? That's a big problem that a lot of people have that we help solve. And then it kind of gets into, I like to say that most of the folks on this call are likely really experts at pallets of new inventory and parcels of online orders out, or, pallets of retail orders out. But one of the big problems that exists in returns is every return is not really it's not a kind of pallet of new inventory. It's individual parcels that have already been touched by another human. And so being able to understand how should I attack the pile of parcels that might come in, especially during peak times of the year. And then for every brand whose inventory is in that pile, how do I know how to enforce the right SOP for the inspection of that item and then the ultimate disposition of that item? That is a really nasty problem that a lot of operators fall back to, really like PDF instruction manuals or, Google Sheets to track work. And so that's, sort of one of the other big parts of 2Boxes is that driving that SOP and inspection at a brand and even a category level. And then really using 2Boxes to track what's happening in this operation so that 3PLs can identify opportunities to improve or just do basic things like send the right bill for the right work that was performed that day for that merchant. And then last, but certainly not least, one of the big areas that I think a lot of people struggle with in returns and somewhere where we spend a lot of time is, returns are complex and kind of ever evolving, right? I think Sean's got merchants that he works with today that launch new products all the time, right? And when you launch a new product, how do you train a team member on how to inspect that product when it comes back to the warehouse? That's something where we're always trying to learn from our customers and put new features in the product to enable returns to be kind of this iterative and continuously improving process that also merchants can be a part of. That's something that, and maybe I'll end here and then let Sean jump in. Something that I see a lot, especially on LinkedIn or Twitter, sorry, X, I guess we call it nowadays. Something I see a lot is this kind of trope of 3PLs are bad and merchants are good, right? And like the merchants are, pointing the finger at the 3PL. And most of the time when I see merchants and 3PLs are at odds over something in their process, it's typically that it hasn't been communicated well. And that there's not a good way to track what's actually happening, and then not a good way to continually partner to improve that process. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we're particularly passionate about, right? Is merchants and 3PLs need to collaborate over a good return process. And we're trying to make 2Boxes a fantastic tool for that collaboration to really occur. I'll pause there. Sean, any comments that you have on this?
Yeah, I've got 2 points to add. One is I'll back up a little bit kind of to the life cycle of return. An area of struggle that operations can have, fulfillment centers primarily, is how do I even have visibility of what's coming back? There's a lot of work that a lot of organizations do to make sure that you can labor plan effectively for outbound volume or scheduling inbound freight. Returns is always just I don't know what's going to show up today. It could be 5 packages, it could be 500 packages. And how do you labor plan for that? How do you, ensure that you're hitting your SLAs? And, I think it's a great thing that 2Boxes has been able to provide to us, especially when there's a plug-in to an RMA provider like a Loop, like a Happy, where there's a pre-authorized return that's been coming back. We now have that visibility to understand at least what's in transit, so that you can understand, what the lift is going to be. You can make the assumption based off of the return rate that you have, previous slide, 30%, 20%, whatever it is. And you can somewhat roughly gauge to that, but it's still a best guess. It's best that you actually have some concrete data to say what's going to come back in, so that I know how I need to staff it effectively. The second piece to that is, I think returns, whether brands want to accept them or not, are inevitable. And we have to approach that a lot of that way with a lot of partners that we have, that, as we look at onboarding a new client, that's usually one of the modules that we'll go through with, well, how do you want to handle returns? And they'll say, well, we don't do returns, or we don't authorize returns. And I always have to correct them and say, but you do, you don't realize it. There are a subset of packages that are going to get shipped to your buyers that aren't going to make it, and they're going to be returned back to us because they're undeliverable. I still have to action that when it comes back. So we need to talk about, the mechanism of inspecting it, setting those SOPs. Like, you still have to configure it like you're handling returns, even though they're not pre-authorizing returns. So I think you always have to view it as returns are always going to happen with a brand, and that you just need to prepare for it. Again, that's what I love about the software, is the pre-configure SOPs that we can put in there. It's easy for us to be able to walk through, okay, it is apparel. What do you want us to inspect? These are the most common things. So like the ease of use is there, but again, I can't drive enough the visibility to know what's coming in. And then you should just always assume that a return is going to happen, whether you're planning for it or not.
Yeah, no, Sean, I appreciate you making that comment. One of the things that I consistently hear about in fulfillment operations is visibility, right? Visibility to what's going on, what's coming in, what's going out. And then also, to your point, a good sense of what's the actual effort it takes to perform a specific function in your warehouse. And to this topic today is returns. Obviously, with our system, it's a lot about what's it actually take to pick an order and fulfill it. So having really good insight into that, so that you can build the best model and figure out how you can be profitable, certainly as a 3PL and as a brand. So love that. Anything else you two wanted to comment on this?
Maybe a question for Sean. When it comes to sort of like the visibility and operational improvement, maybe kind of speak to before and after implementing something like 2Boxes. How's that changed and sort of impacted the business?
Yeah, I'll tell you the early stages, which is, obviously not the proudest part of the story today, but I think it just kind of segues into the success of this partnership. Historically, we mentioned earlier in this call about managing through like Excel spreadsheets or some other web-based just dashboard. That was a reality for us. As a return came in, we had paper SOPs, because when you're managing, multiple different brands within your organization, having that knowledge for your associates is very tough, but you still need to give them some guidance. So we were operating off of paper SOPs that we were developing with as many photos as we could. We were just capturing the data within a Google sheet that we then just shared with our clients once a week. It was not an ideal situation. We knew that we needed to be able to manage returns because it's just an accent piece to the full fulfillment cycle. But it was a very manual process that had a lot of gaps in it. We understood that. We recognized that. We knew we needed to pivot. Today, all the SOPs are preloaded. As it pulls up on the screen for the associate on the floor, once they've initiated that return, we're now giving them guidance at a digital level, what to inspect for, examples of photos, because it's things that you can preload in the SOP. So when you're telling somebody, look for a smudge, you can actually give them an example of what a smudge or a tear in a seam looks like. It's all digital for them now. There's different language settings, which are huge. Obviously being able to translate those SOPs in different languages is always something that is in need in a lot of fulfillment centers. We can do that now. And it's live reporting. So basically, as we've initiated and completed that return, whatever the outcome of the return is, that data is made available to our clients immediately. They have access to the dashboard. They can see the return records directly within the 2Boxes dashboard. So they're no longer waiting on us to once a week kind of batch that information and send it to them. They see it now firsthand, which just allows them to make quicker decisions on refunds, on exchanges. Those are huge, all big bonus points that we've been able to do. So where we're at today is a very happy place with returns because of that change.
Yeah, and Sean, I'm imagining too, it's got to provide operational efficiency within your side too, right? Because absent that, you're running around pushing all this information to your customers.
Yeah.
And so by doing what you just described, you're also gaining a lot of efficiency from your perspective as well. Yeah.
Well, the thing I want to add to that is, with a manual process, it is difficult for you to assess what your units per hour is for the different type of returns. You can log it as manual as you want, but it's still not a great calculation. Mm-hmm. And some of the dashboard, especially the UPH dashboard reporting that we've been able to get out of 2Boxes, it actually starts to paint a clearer picture for you, maybe where some of your more labor lift can be. An RMA return, for example, because it's pre-authorized, has a different UPH for something like as a work capture, because there's a little more manual lift that you have to do to kind of build the record first. So that it educates you on the amount of effort that your labor is going into processing those different kind of returns. That helps, especially on the fulfillment side, to make sure that you're pricing return processing accordingly, to make sure that you're recovering the labor that you're putting into it, whether it's an automated version through an RMA provided, or whether it's a little bit of a manual, record building that you have to do on the front end before you get into the grading.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And it's actually a great segue. So I think what we're going to spend a little bit of time on now is just the product itself, Kyle, a little bit of the application. And then on the back end of this, Kyle, after you speak to this, Sean, I'd love you to talk a little bit about how easy has it been to get your team trained? I think speed to value is critical when we're looking at bringing on different technologies. Certainly there's a lot of peak season components to what we do in this space. So you've got temp labor at times. I've again, going back to my stories of touring facilities and, hey, that's the returns area, don't go there. It's also, there's only certain people that know what's going on there, right? It's like this secret code. And if you've been there long enough, you know how to do it. And if not, and so I'd love to talk a little bit about ease of use and some of that as well. But Kyle, you want to talk a little bit about what folks are looking at here?
Sure. Absolutely. So I can just kind of start and do this hopefully relatively quickly. So, really the idea is that once a return arrives to a facility, and I should even back up, as Sean mentioned, one of the really important things is Two Boxes provides that visibility into the facility, right? For any of the RMA returns, how many returns are expected according to tracking information, today, tomorrow, the next day, etc. But then once that return is received, the way that I try to describe Two Boxes pretty simply to a lot of our customers is our goal is to enable any person in any one of Sean's buildings to process returns from any one of their brands according to that brand standard with effectively next to no training, right? So that a return is received. You're then going to scan that return in Two Boxes. You're not going to have to look it up in multiple different systems depending on the RMA provider. You're then going to be given the right SOP for the items that are in that package, right? So if it's an apparel brand and maybe they have a button-down shirt and a t-shirt, these are going to have different SOPs for that brand, right? So we then guide the person through the right inspection for the right product. They don't have to remember a 50-page SOP. They just remember how to follow the instructions in Two Boxes. Then based on their instruction, we're going to be able to do really all these kind of things that are required in the return process. So it's everything from capturing photos of damage, right? We talk to a lot of 3PLs who say, hey, the merchant requires that for any damaged item, I have to take a photo of it. But how do you actually enforce that policy on the floor, right? So in Two Boxes, we can configure that so that at a damage level, that's going to require a photo before somebody moves on, right? Capture photos just using the hardware that we provide. We can identify missing items. We can help indicate fraud, things like that. And then at the end of the day, everything that one of Sean's employees does in the warehouse or a Two Boxes user does is going to be captured in Flow, right? So there's no more manual data entry of creating a spreadsheet to send to the merchant at the end of the day. It's all just captured. That enables us to do reporting for merchants, but also reporting for warehouse statistics that matter, like units per hour, or maybe your value-added service success rate, or the efficiency of employee A versus employee B. And then last but certainly not least, we have detailed WMS integrations like the one we have with Logiwa to enable really easy inventory adjustments and WMS updates, so that 3PLs can get away from that dreaded swivel chair problem of I got to go in this system and then I got to go to that system. Sean was actually very patient with us for a while, as we work through that. But I'm really proud to say we're at a point now where our WMS integrations are great and are starting to eliminate that issue. But that's sort of the high level.
Yeah, no, that's great. So Sean, I'd love to ask. So based on what Kyle just described, how easy has it been for your team to leverage the technology, get your folks up and running? The implementation, like you've got a bunch of audience. I just had a conversation with a customer of ours. She signed you for the webinar and then she's still on. But she just described what Kyle was talking about, but they do it manually, right? So it's Excel spreadsheets, it's cameras, and so you were there and now you've implemented this technology. Can you talk a little bit about that process? That'd be great.
Yeah, the ease of use has been huge, and you mentioned as sites look at peak seasons, how quickly can you onboard new associates? And, you'd like to think that returns are repetitive enough that tribal knowledge starts to kick in. But these associates see any different combinations, especially within the grading or the disposition of it. The piece I wanted to mention that I wanted to add on with what Kyle had mentioned is I think you also have to look at, there's the inspection part of it, which Two Boxes does a great job of providing those kind of preset SOPs that you can do where, hey, I do have a specific t-shirt, so I need to inspect that the pocket is intact or that there's no stains, there's no smells. There's all those preset SOPs that you can do that really cuts down that training piece of folks because you're essentially just following the self-service or the guidance of the system. I think the last piece to that I want to add though quickly is, I think a lot of facilities do a lot of work in training their associates on how to record and grade it, but probably could do a better job of giving them some guidance of, okay, I've done that step, now what? Yeah. Right? Maybe it's recoverable, so you want me to put it away. That's where those integrations become extremely helpful because now it's one less step that you have to do. But let's just say the disposition of that specific merchant or brand wants you to donate them or dispose of them. you need to be able to give that same guidance to an operator on the floor that says, okay, I've done all those steps. Now what am I supposed to do with it? Right? Am I supposed to throw it away? Am I supposed to put it in the donation gaylord? Am I supposed to put it away? Like, you have to consider that that's all part of that process as well. And I think, 2boxes module, being able to provide those different disposition categories is very helpful. It's preset, and it's something that you work with your merchants and say, okay, if there's no defects, what do you want me to do with it? And, most times it's put it back to stock. But if there is defects, what do you want me to do with it? And they might say, hey, we want you to hold on to them and then send them back to us periodically, or you can go and donate those or just dispose of it. You have to consider that as part of the full end-to-end process of an operator on the floor. So I want to make sure I highlight that as well, because I think 2boxes does a great job of just answering that, what do I do? Because you don't want to put that guesswork or that decision to that associate on the floor. You want to be able to tell them where to go with it.
Yeah, no, Sean, actually, it's funny you say that. So Kyle, I don't think you were on this call, but we did a review between our two teams on the integration and the way that it works together, right? And there was a lot of excitement, Sean, around what you just described, where we can consume that. And then we have the ability to customize put away algorithms and predefine when that file comes in or that data comes in. We can then tell that person on the floor, once that item is ready to do whatever with, where to go and what to do next, right? So to your point, that guided process of making it easy for folks to know what to do next is really, really important in removing friction in that process. So really good call out. I want to be sensitive to time. We got 10 minutes. I think Sean, Kyle, and I could talk for a couple hours. I know Kyle just looked up. It's like 50 minutes has gone by. What I wanted to do real quick is Sean, Kyle, and the team put together a pretty awesome, what I think, promo for the attendees of the webinar. Kyle, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Thanks for that. So
yeah,
we, to be honest, we've really never done this before, but I've been spending a lot of time over the last 4 or 5 months, kind of started around the Christmas holiday, just talking to a lot of brands and 3PLs who are trying to figure out how are we going to manage through what is likely coming down the pipe with tariffs and other kind of supply chain, potential shocks that we might see this year. And so, something that we put together as an offer here for kind of to celebrate this new Logiwa partnership and really support a lot of 3PLs and brands in this environment is 60 days free with 2boxes. So really white glove onboarding, dedicated support, 60 days free. You try it out. If you like it, we can move into a longer term relationship from there. If we don't, no harm, no foul. This is something that I'm probably most proud about with 2boxes. Is really two things. We had a 3PL advisory board meeting last week. Sean's actually a member of our 3PL advisory board. So thank you, Sean, for that. And the number one thing that came up about what folks really loved about 2boxes was the team and the support. And so something that we really, I think, do a great job of is getting people stood up fast, making sure that we get that time to value that folks need. Our average right now is about 22 days from contract signed to first live returns in your facility. And then the other thing that I'm really proud of is we have 100% expansion rate. So if a 3PL uses us with one of their brands or in one of their facilities, we actually see 100% expansion rate, meaning within 90 days, all of those customers expand to at least a second facility or at least a second merchant. So love to just get the product in people's hands, try it out, especially with the new IO integration. I mean, I think this is really something that is incredibly fast time to value. So really excited about this. If you want to take us up on it, just shoot a note to sales@2boxes.com or, send me a LinkedIn message or any of our team members LinkedIn message, or go to our website and we'll get you set up.
Yeah, and I echo that. So anybody, for any of our existing customers for Logiwa, you can also let your CSM know, like, whatever is the easiest way to get connected. We're thrilled that these guys are offering this today to the attendees and really excited about it. And I echo, Kyle, throughout the evaluation process with your team, responsiveness, I think a modern UI, very intuitive, UI, like all of the things that we focus on to be a good partner to our customers, you guys have mirrored in spades. We are really, really excited about this partnership as well. Okay, with that, I know we only have a little bit of time left. Why don't we go to, as best we can, get through some of the questions that we have. Kyle, I think you are most excited about maybe this question. It's around tariffs, so I'm definitely going to let you start, and Sean and I will decide if we want to get in here. How do you anticipate that tariff uncertainty will affect consumer behavior with regards to returns, and how will this impact operations?
Yeah, so I will keep my comments to returns because I do not think I'm an expert on tariffs. I do think I'm close to an expert on returns, although I don't think you're ever really an expert in anything, in my opinion. But what I think is going to happen is really that I believe that a lot of brands and merchants will sort of wake up this year to the fact that returns are not a cost center for them. Returns are inventory. And that inventory is incredibly valuable, especially in this environment, right? That inventory that's in the United States has already passed customs. It's already paid a tariff on it. You've already paid your supplier for it. And so I think a lot of brands are going to see that is inventory that is recoverable. And they, I think, will put more pressure than they ever have on their partners when it comes to, hey, I need to get that inventory out of boxes and Gaylords and back to sellable, pickable locations in a warehouse as fast as possible. Yeah. And at number one, and number two, I need to get as many of those units. If 100 units show up, I need to get as close to 100 units that are resellable as quickly as possible. So I think that that's going to push a lot of merchants to, ask suppliers like Sean for, more and better service, maybe offer value-added service programs as a 3PL that you didn't, offer before. And the other thing that I think we will see, one of my bets with the team internally is I think fraud rates will spike significantly this year. And the reason I believe that is I believe that how tariffs will play out is that prices will increase more than they already have to date, especially as we get into May and June. I think we will see with prices increasing a lot of end consumers thinking, oh, well, maybe I can just return this and, commit a little bit of abuse or fraud here or there to use an item or, effectively buy an item on the cheap. And so I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on the merchants and warehouses as well. So those are my kind of quick, tariff takes.
No, love it. Shawnee, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think I can speak to it kind of operationally, but I think the change that we're actively seeing are a lot of brands that are moving from a drop ship model to a US-based fulfillment model because they just want to be able to pull the inventory in at a larger scale instead of drop shipping. Mm-hmm. So I think it's going to have a certain impact, of course, on the amount of returns that we'll see within facilities, only because it's just going to increase the volume within US-based fulfillment centers. We're actively seeing it play out in front of us right now. So I think it's just going to continue based off of the impact of those tariffs. Yeah.
Hey, Kyle, I've got another question, and Sean, this is probably something you could comment on too, or certainly you could comment on. When is enough that somebody should investigate or evaluate 2Box is the right solution for me, right? Like, well, hey, it started out with 10 returns a day, and now I'm at 100. Like, what is the number, or is there a number? Love to give our audience some perspective there.
Yeah, Sean, I might throw this back to you. I mean, you reached out to us. It was, or something. We got connected 2 years ago around this time, actually. Your volumes, I think, have changed quite a bit. But was there like a number in your mind as an operator? I'm curious because I have my opinion, but wondering from your perspective, like when you thought it made a lot of sense.
I think it's difficult to put an exact number on it. I think in most cases, when you start viewing returns as more of a potential either revenue gainer for an organization versus, a lot of times organizations look at returns as it's just something that I have to do as an asset piece to win the rest of the business. Yeah. And I think no matter what that number is for you, the moment that you can flip your perspective and say there's some potential in returns, especially because it just leads to like better partnerships with your partners because of the speed of service that you can do. Obviously you have to be cost cognizant to make sure that the platform makes sense for you dollars and cents wise. But I think you'll see the savings in the UPH increase the retention of your associates on the floor, that I think once you actually start prioritizing returns versus it just being, again, that kind of in the closet in the corner, it totally makes sense for you to do it then.
Yeah, the old saying, whatever you water grows. And if you want to improve your returns
Yeah.
and spend the time and energy there, you can do that. And certainly that's what Two Boxes has done.
Yeah. What I would just say quickly on that is, if you just look at our data, most of our customers, when they start with us, are in the range of like, at least 100 return units a day, where they're having to staff at least one full-time person, sometimes two full-time people. And then when you start to get over that, that's where I think we have, meaningful ROI for a lot of folks on the call.
Okay. Yeah, no, Kyle, the other thing I was thinking about too is to Sean, your point, when you're bidding on work and you don't have a great returns process, specifically if it's an apparel brand, right? Like that's a pretty important piece to have. So just to your point, both from a volume, but then also from a growth, where do you want to grow? How do you want to grow? That's a lot of times where we spend conversations with our customers, is like where you are today versus what's your trajectory and how confident are you with your systems to allow you to get there.
Yeah.
So great call. I'll try to go through just a couple more questions. I know we're at time. If folks have to drop, we will share the recording. But Kyle, real quick, EDI integrations with Two Boxes. You want to touch on that?
Yeah. So most of our integrations are with, RMA providers via API or, and then WMS on the API side. API integrations with WMS providers for put away. We don't have any dedicated EDI integrations today, but I'm always, one of the ways that we build our roadmap is talking to 3PLs, right? Like, hey, what do you need? And we have an extremely competent and fast moving, onshore team that builds features really quickly. So I think that question was from Juan. Juan, if you want to connect off the call, I'm absolutely happy to cover that one.
Yeah. And then Shay had a question just on pricing, not to necessarily get into maybe Kyle numbers, but talk a little bit how you guys approach that.
Yeah. So pricing, really is sort of volumetric based. So we have different tiers that include a certain amount of volume. And then as you scale with us, we scale. There are some one-time fees for working with Two Boxes related to, hardware and certain, kind of deployment work. But what I like to say to most folks is we're not a cheap solution, but we think we provide a lot of value. So if you're having a lot of returns, I think you're going to be hard pressed, especially as a 3PL, to find something that is, really a better fit. And what I also love to do, I spend at least probably a couple hours a week doing this, is work with new customers to talk through ROI, really get into the numbers, go through what we're able to do for you. And then last and certainly not least, a lot of our customers are on our website. I think the vast majority are. So reach out to them, talk to folks like Sean, get their take, and see what the value is. The last one that I'll hit here, Damien, is on the multiple RMA processors.
Yep.
Yes, so we do seamlessly integrate with multiple RMA processors. We have close to a dozen at this point. We're adding more and more all the time. This is one of the biggest, value props for us, especially to 3PLs who have clients with lots of different RMAs. We don't replace those. We integrate with them. We partner with them. And the idea is, no matter how that return shows up into the warehouse across, dozens or hundreds of different brands that you might serve, you just use Two Boxes as kind of one tool, to serve them all. So always happy to connect about functionality as well after the call.
Great. I know we're a couple minutes over. I'll go ahead and stop the webinar here. First off, to everybody that made this possible, thank you. There's a lot of folks that covered for Sean while he was doing this, for Kyle, for myself. So thank you to all of them. Todd, special to thank you backstage. Always making what we do look easy. There's a lot of lifting that goes into it, specifically helping me. So that's a full-time job in itself. But anyways, Sean, Kyle, thank you so much. Really appreciated your insight. Any questions, guys, we didn't get to, I will make sure that we follow up and get you the proper answer. But again, just a special thank you to everybody taking time today. Hope you enjoyed the webinar. I certainly know I did.
Absolutely. Thank you, Damien. Thank you, Sean.
Yes. Thank you to everyone.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, guys. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.